Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next short attention span webinar. Today, Kelly, we are going to be we're talking about being curious,
Great.
sales curious. And this is an interesting concept. This is something that I found myself saying to a client the other day in a coaching call, and I wrote it down. And I thought this would make it a really kind of interesting short attention span webinar, which is where a lot of the ideas come from. Being sales curious means you're not taking something at face value. Kelly, do you remember who Lieutenant Columbo was?
Peter Falk. It was
Peter
like from
Falk.
the 70s.
Yeah. There was,
I loved him. He always like scratched his head and acted like he didn't know what was going on.
yeah. And what did he do? He used to spend about 53 minutes out of the episode asking questions, and then he'd solve the problem. Right? He would solve the crime in the snap of a finger.
Yeah.
He was curious. He never took anything for granted. He questioned assumptions. He would ask questions. He would ask more questions, and then he would ask more questions after that. And the idea here is that you want to be sales curious. You want to find out about either business in general or a specific business. Because here's the thing, you go to college, I don't care if you've got a marketing degree like I do, or if it's a degree in cooking, nobody pulls you aside and says, let me talk to you about how a business operates. That way you'll know. So I find that when I'm coaching people, I have to kind of talk to them about here's what happens in the world of business. Here are the challenges, and here's how you can benefit from it. Okay. So Kelly, help me out here. Tell me a little bit more about what I mean here to be sales curious.
Well, again, this could be applied so many different ways. I mean, it could be applied in the prospecting process when you're trying to land appointments, but it could also, I mean, really this more applies to when you're getting to know a business or even in an account review, when you're talking to existing clients about what their plans are, how things are going. I mean, because this is information that we really actually do need to know to be better able to assist and kind of serve our customers. So asking things like, how's business going? I mean, you want to know, are they up? Are they down? What are they planning? What are they, what's on the agenda for 2013? Are they launching new products? What's planned, what's going on? And specifically when it comes to printing, it's the difference between having a client hand you some specs and an example of a project and you just going back to your estimator and getting an estimate for it. That's one way to go. Another way to go is to say, what are you going to use this for?
Hmm.
How are you delivering it? What's the goal of the piece? How will you know if it's successful? Huge difference. And again, this really does, in the purposes of this discussion, it is the difference between being sales curious and wanting to be involved with the client and just being an order taker.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of questions that you can get good at. You'll find, I think one of the great tips we can give people is after they've had an event, if you will, or an episode when they've heard themselves be curious, when there's a moment, write down all the questions that you asked because this is a great way of becoming consultative. Okay. So you might want to say to somebody, tell me about your business. Tell me about your job. What does it entail? Where did you come from? What's your background? What's your history? Tell me about your network. Now, why would I ask about someone's network, Kelly?
Well, again, this is just about connecting the dots.
Yeah,
It's who do they know, and
right.
again, this is just a great way. It's like something you said similarly about run for mayor. It's like the more people you know, the
Yeah.
stronger you'll be.
Yep. And the benefits of this to being sales curious, it uncovers opportunities. God gave you two ears and one mouth. Do the math. You learn, as my father pointed out, you learn nothing with your mouth open, right? So you ask a question and then you listen and then you become Lieutenant Columbo. As Kelly pointed out before we started this, do you think anybody below the age of 30 is going to know who Lieutenant Columbo was? And I said no. So Google it or put it on, look it up on YouTube. How's that? Which is, of course, owned by Google. But it helps you to uncover the opportunities. It demonstrates interest. I mean, who doesn't like to talk about themselves? Customers love talking about themselves. People love talking about themselves. And it helps you, if your brand is one of being resourceful, of having ideas, it helps build up that brand. So now I'm going to do something, one of my favorite things to do, pick on Kelly. So Kelly, let's say you walk in, you got the girls with you, and you're walking down to the bank, or you're pushing the stroller down to the bank, and you're making a deposit. And behind the counter is the bank manager, and her name is Sharon. That's the manager at my bank, Eastern Bank here in Duxbury. And Sharon has a button on, and the button says, "Have you talked to Fred today?" What would a sales curious conversation sound like?
Well, the absolute first thing I want to do is find out who Fred is.
Okay, Fred.
So I'd ask who Fred was and what, again, what the purpose of the button is,
Hmm,
because obviously they're trying to direct potential customers to potentially a new offering or something like that. So I'd want to find out as much about that as I possibly can. And then I would ask things like, I mean, generally speaking, about the bank in general, I would want to know how's business.
hmm
I might, if I was being really curious, want to ask about their competition and who they view their competition as and how they're dealing with that situation. Might want to know about who they're targeting in terms of new customers and how they're going about bringing those new customers into the bank, what possibly other avenues they're looking at to capture the more tech-savvy customers, the younger customers who probably don't ever set foot in a bank. Those would be some things I would want to know about, and then generally, possibly even again applying my own knowledge, talk about some of my own user experiences within that bank, and ask questions about that. And again, if there's anything specific ideas that I have that I might be able to find a way to interject into that conversation. But Bill, there's one kind of ironic thing that I wanted to bring up
hmm.
about your example of Columbo. One thing, and those of you who've never seen him, one of the things that Columbo was really, what his absolute strength was, is that he disarmed people.
Hmm.
Nobody expected him to be as brilliant as he was because he was always kind of walking around in this kind of clueless haze. And my boss at Canon actually called his sales technique the Columbo, because what he would do is walk out of the office and then walk back in and go, I've just got one more question for
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
And those are, again, these are stylistic, and they're you develop your own personal way to do this. But you definitely, as you talked about some of these benefits of being sales curious, that's another one, is to again, kind of, if you're looking at this more from a user experience standpoint, you're going to get a lot of really good information from those people.
And you know what? So what do you do with that information then? One of the questions being sales curious is, hey Sharon, who do you report to? She's a bank manager. Somebody above her is saying, we're putting buttons on. Everyone needs to talk to Fred because we want to sell more to existing customers. Now, if part of the conversation, Kelly, you find out that Sharon is compensated, thus motivated for how many people she pushes to Fred, then you could think to yourself, how can I help Sharon? And that thought process is how you sell print or labels or packaging or signage or whatever you're selling successfully. This is the starting point of a good, profitable sale that doesn't end in the statement, your price is too high. That's the value of having this kind of conversation. And what you'll hear is, once you have this conversation multiple times, you'll hear the same questions come out again and again and again. And that's the value of this. So that's just kind of a taste of what becoming sales curious means. So Kelly, once again, I put you on the spot, and once again, you nailed it. You, you stuck
Thanks,
the land.
Bill.
Great job. Great job. And everyone, we'll
Hey,
talk to you on the next short attention span webinar. Thanks, Kelly.
thanks, Bill.